beautiful Saturday, the 29th of December of January 2021. For the second time, our expert scholar and what Professor James Small described Dr. Edwin Nichols as the God of culture, the God. So Dr. Edwin Nichols is sitting here with us in the studio for the second time, ladies and gentlemen, Africans and dear watchers. And today we're going to be talking about culture and development. And like we always been talking about the best or the perfect or the suitable model that would fit for Africa's liberation and development and advancement is actually going back to our culture. Yeah, but how many of us actually would identify culture? Culture is in with different lenses today. I mean, we're talking about our way of life. And when we want to break it down, what is our way of life? Is it just only the colorful prints or designs that we wear on our shirts that determine that we are African? Is it only just maybe the plate, the food combination that we have when we serve dinner at home? Is it also the artifacts that surround us in our homes that make us African? What is it that culture is a value added or one of the biggest tools that we as Africans should know to be able to maybe define who we are? I want to thank all of you that are watching this show, that are joining this special conversation tonight. And please be ready for this topic that has been always one of the key sectors and area that, irrespective of what we talk about, we still always turning around the circle to come back to the middle point and say culture. Now, how do we want to understand culture? We have our expert and scholar, and one of the best that we have on the continent is a descendant of Africa, but also what I call a patchwork of cultures in terms of experience. In terms of experience, you would realize and discover with me that Dr. Nichols, that is sitting right here in studio with me, has been in German. He knows so well the German culture, the ethics. You know, he studied in Germany, but he is like a Swabian. When he speaks German, he speaks the dialect German, not just, you know, the kind of broken ones that some of us are. So he's just a combination of, you know, getting these pieces and putting it together, be it from historical background right up to the present setup. Dr. Nichols is the right person, and we are so honored and humbled. And I can say one of the best gifts that we have on the continent, that we have this kind of great minds and personalities who are ready to give us, to liberate us, to give us all we need to know to be able to embrace who we are, or even just to, you know, rectify our identity, as we've been talking about all this mixed salad, like what we call salad mix of different cultures and religions and beliefs and ethics and whatever that brought through colonization or globalization. And so all this patchworks is what has been able to make us as African not own an identity. And so we find ourselves trying to rectify our color, our hair, our food, our way of doing things that actually did not really say who we are. So I want to thank all of you for joining and inviting you to this warm session. We're going to be here for 2 hours as usual. This is a Saturday evening, and I want to welcome all of you out there. Now, back to studio with our guest for tonight. Good evening, Dr. Nichols. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. You look always, I mean, sometimes I begin to think the elder we become, the younger we look. It has that
Ah,
something to do with culture of the mind or what?
well, this elder is 89 years old, so
Wow. 89.
Yeah, yeah, 89. So this is elderly.
Does that have, does it, I mean, we also asked Professor James Small and even Dr. Dr. Shaba the other day, has that got to do with the thinking and the cultural setup and the mindset? What is this all has to do with?
Well, it has a lot to do with nutrition. Well, first of all, you have genes that help you, but it's the nutrition, the diet, and the conditions under which you grew up.
Mhm.
Um, so we have children in Flint, Michigan, where they changed the water source from the lakes to the river, and a lot of lead went into the children's bodies. So their brain is not going to develop as well. You have other situations where paint was used with lead, and as that paint chips off, little children nibble at it, and
Mhm.
that gives other problems. Then you have the emotional things that happen, particularly in this country, in the United States, where as a minority, you're always compared to the white male. That's the standard, and everybody's compared to the white male. Well, the living conditions, the economic conditions, the income, and so forth of African Americans is much lower than that of whites. And right now we have the coronavirus. Well, they keep saying, well, of course, there's a higher number of African Americans who die from corona. But they don't give you the reasons why, they just give you the numbers. So we need to look at why. What are the things that exist that make that a reality? So,
Um, I come from Cameroon, southern region of Cameroon, and I know French. I speak my mother language or dialect. We call. I speak German. I speak French. Um, yes. So, what kind of a combination am I?
you're considered what the colonialists wanted. They want you to prioritize one of the European languages as mother tongue.
Mhm.
And what you have as your own, you see, you noticed that you called your language a dialect. You see, you would never say that Danish was a dialect or Swedish was a dialect or Norwegian was a dialect. But where you come from in Cameroons, that part of the Cameroons, there are more people there that speak their dialect, which is terrible. It's a language, not a dialect. You
Mhm.
see, you have to train the language that you're using. Yours is a language, it's not a dialect. A dialect is like Swedish.
Mhm.
It's German, but it's a dialect of the German language. Yours is a language all by itself. Now, if someone went to Norway and said, oh, the Norwegians speak a dialect, they would be very upset. It's Norwegian language.
Mhm.
It's the Danish language. Well, you have a larger population in Cameroons where you come from, more people that speak the same language than you do in Norway speaking Norwegian. So you see, when you talk about culture, we have to clear our minds of these colonial things. Let me give you another example. I told you I taught at the University of Baden in Nigeria.
Mhm.
Now, what they will do to you see that you have to be have there are those in charge and those who are subordinate. That's the way the world works. That's what colonialism is all about. So let me show
Mhm.
you how we do that. Um, in Denmark, okay, the head of Denmark is a king. Well, an Oba in Nigeria is a chief.
Mhm.
Um, the Danish language, the Yoruba dialect. Are you seeing what's going on now? If you look at the population of Yorubas in Nigeria, it is more than the population of Denmark. Yet you call their people chiefs and dialects and all these derogatory, which is to put you less. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So we have to rid our minds of that and say that, what is your language? And you now I'm asking you, what is your language?
Ah,
Tell me.
meta, meta.
All right, Mita is my language, and that's it. Now, what we have to do is to develop the grammar or understand the grammar and to make it a written language. The Europeans have been very successful in this. Theirs is a written language, they have literature, they have mythology. So people need to go back and write your mythology down. What did the elders say about the stars and the moon, and what did they say about gods and goddesses and so forth? Well, when you have Christianity come in, it says, oh, no, 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 do that. That's pagan. But we talk about Narcissus and Echo, Greek mythology. That doesn't make us pagan. So that's where you start to make things to enrich your own culture so that it is your culture. And you otherwise, with a colonial mentality, what they've been successful in doing is giving two levels. One level is you are acceptable, and the other is, oh, that's so primitive, that's pagan, that's and we don't want to do that. We want to claim our own. That's number one, claim our own, that in culture. Because a part of culture is your language. Now, let me give you an example. When you dream, do you dream in German or French or English?
And oh, that's difficult.
Yes, because sometimes when it's something really serious, you dream in mother tongue. You dream
Yes.
in, you dream in your own language. When it's really serious, you dream in your own language. Now, there are other times that you dream, and I remember my first dream in German. I was in analysis. You know, to be a psychologist in Europe, you have to go in analysis. I was in analysis. My analyst kept asking me, what did you dream last night? What did you dream? I didn't dream anything. Then finally, I was so excited. I said, I had a dream in German. I had a dream in German. He said, tell me. The man walked up to me on the street and said, where is the Bahnhof? And I said, geradeaus, straight ahead. That was my whole dream in German. Well, that was my first time that my system was permitting me to dream in a foreign language. Now you have to look at your dreams and then think, when did I dream this? What did I use? And what was the language of my conversation? That will help you to better understand when you use the different languages. If it's a girlfriend calling from home, you may speak English to each other, or you may speak French. I don't know which, if you're the northern part, it'll be English first. Okay? So what we're doing is, I'm saying we're ridding our minds of colonialism. That doesn't mean that you stop reading and writing French or stop reading and writing English. They are important languages. But it says you don't prioritize them above your own.
Correct.
So when we talk about your culture, ask yourself, what language, and when there's something really going on, what language do I dream in? If you dream in mother tongue, then you know it's an important dream. Sometimes an ancestor will come to you in your dream. They don't speak English or French, they speak the mother tongue. So we want to stay connected to our roots. If you're connected to your roots, then you can bloom as a culture.
Wow.
That makes sense? Okay.
Makes too much sense. I'm still trying to now, if you look at the continent and you're saying the culture should be, and I don't even understand when we see like Agenda 2063 of the Africa Union for the development or sustainable development goals of Africa right now. There is nothing like stipulated on, culture as one of our values. Okay, they're talking about renaissance, but what is actually renaissance? Now we see the Africa Free Trade Continental Area coming. Now, what kind of a common language are we going to use? Now we
Well,
see Chinese language even. And
yeah.
all this, where do we
No,
start?
well, okay, now here's the deal. You had colonial powers that occupied after the Treaty of Berlin in 1870 something under Bismarck. You cut Africa up, not by where people are as a group, but for an example, a half of the Yoruba group is in Nigeria, the other half is in Benin.
Mm.
Whereas in Europe, all the French are together in one country, all the Germans are together in another country, but they just drew lines and separate. So now that creates a cognitive dissonance. Let me give you an example. If you grow up with Yoruba mythology, you know all the Orishas and so on, that's your mother tongue. Then you go to school and you're exclusively taught in French or exclusively taught in English. Now, those two languages have separated you from your original mythology.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that if you have children from the French side and from the English side, who are both Yoruba, and they have an understanding of the Yoruba mythology, then you ask them to write poetry, they will write it either in French or English, and it's so much like Europe that the Yoruba part isn't even there, and yet they have the myths, they have the
Mm-hmm.
history. They can use the talking drum for the Yoruba. Yoruba's tonal. So you see, what happens is we wash out our indigenous culture to replace it with something that is foreign.
Mm-hmm.
And very often you will hear people, now the French insist that you speak French better than the French. Otherwise they won't accept you. So here you spend years and years and years learning to speak French. You go to France and your grammar is better than the average person walking around there white.
Mm.
But that's, you see, that's how they control. Now the British are more, let's see, how do you, they are there to get the money. They will give you a part of their culture, but it's called benign neglect.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they feel about all their colonies. Now, Canada, you know, it's all white there for the most part. It used to be, not now.
Mm-hmm.
But that the British policy toward Australia, New Zealand, and Canada was the same as it was for Gold Coast, which is benign neglect.
Mm-hmm.
We give you all, we talk about the benefits, but then we neglect to carry it through. All right? We want you to pass, used to be Cambridge, I'm that old. For you, it would be O levels or A levels.
Correct.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't supply you the textbooks and information anymore to do that. So you have to come up with something that's kind of a combination of O levels and A levels. See? So here, for an example, your A levels don't come from England anymore. They come from a West African educational collaboration. They used to come directly from England.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they don't. They've changed that. Now that's a good step. But then when you get ready to go to England to study, they're questioning your A levels. Now, if you got it at what do they used to call these schools? The King's College or the Queen's College high school, that's okay. But if it was from the other high schools, well, maybe not. You have to take a test. See, so these are ways of putting you down. Now, what is the language going to be for Africa? You have Chinese there now. Why did they come in? Okay, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, your country would come and say, we need a road from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
All right? We
Mm-hmm.
need 4 lanes, 2 going north, 2 going south. Fine. We need some bridges to cross it. Good. That's going to cost, we'll just use simple numbers, $1 million. That costs much more, but we'll say $1 million. Fine. Now, the World Bank then grants the $1 million that you have to pay back with interest. What has happened and what is permitted to happen is I'm the president and I get a small cut off of that $1 million. You are my niece and I hire you to do some work that you can't do, but you get a cut too. So by the time the money gets to the man, the engineer who's actually going to build the road, he doesn't have money to buy all of the cement that he needs. So instead of using pure cement, he mixes it with so much sand that within less than a year, you've got ruts and potholes because the cement didn't hold. Or you have the road going all the way out, and then all of a sudden the road stops, and there's the forest from there on. Why is that? They ran out of money. Well, there was enough there. Now the country's in debt. If you had built the road, you would be able to have transport. You could move the goods back and forth across there. But now you can't because it only goes that far, and you got to bring something to it and then get on it. Okay, now what is the reality of that? The reality is now you have to pay back the World Bank with interest. And yet you don't have the road that would connect your villages with food and vegetables for dry goods going back and forth. You don't have the commerce because you don't have the road. Now, what the Chinese did, they looked at all those African countries and they said, for the next 50 years, we will need these specific raw materials in order to do the manufacturing in China that we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Where are those materials? Where do we have the least conflict? Well, they went to East Africa. Now, when they went to East Africa, they said, we will build you a road from point A to point B. We will build you a railroad from point A to point B. Or we will build you 6 bridges or a dam, whatever you say you want, we'll build it. Semicolon, however, comma, you must give us your natural resources for the next 25 years. Okay? Now, how do they do it that's different? Where's the graft coming out? Where's the money coming out to pay me and then to give you my niece some money? The Chinese come with all of their own cement, all of their own iron, all of their own workers who work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that they're going to finish it ahead of time. Now, there's nothing that you gain from them coming in and building the road.
Absolutely.
Okay? Once in a while, they hire, people to carry the bags of cement, but for the most part, they carry the all. So they bring their people in, they do all the work, and when they finish, the road is done, or the train track is done. And it works. But for the next 20 years, your natural resources go to them, because that's what they need in order to do the manufacturing for the next 25 years that they want. Now let's talk about how the Chinese think. In the United States, we have an annual budget. Every year there's another budget that Congress has to pass.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the bickering in the Congress, all right, let's say that in 1919, September 1919 to August 2020 is the fiscal year. They didn't pass the annual budget until a few days before September. A lot of times they do what is called a continuing resolution, just keep paying what you're paying. Now, if you're sitting in an office and you have to plan for a year, how much money am I going to have to plan? Mm-hmm. If I tell you plan a dinner for 20 people, you say, fine, how much money are you giving me? That's the first thing you ask. Yes. Well, don't ask for it now. You just go on and plan, and I'll give the money to you an hour before dinner. What is that nonsense is that? So that's how we do it in this country, which is horrible. Now let's go back to the previous National Communist Chinese Party annual convention. The Premier of China said, I have our plans for the next 50 years. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how are you going to compete with somebody who's planned 50 years ahead? And they meet that obligation. Every 10 years, they know exactly what they accomplish. Mm-hmm. And if it isn't so, somebody's head rolls. Now, how can you compete with somebody who plans 50 years ahead and you're planning 1 year, 1 year, 1 year?
And Africa, not even any plan in a year.
No, no, no. That's, you see, what we have to do as Africans, we have to begin to think that we ourselves are able and capable of doing industrial manufacturing.
Mhm.
When you go to those Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, like Vietnam, like Cambodia, those are the countries that do all of the cloth. All the cloth. It used to be that textiles were made in the southern part of the United States. But when they realized that you could take a textile company there and they could make the product cheaper and ship it back here than it costs, that's when those large companies moved out of the United States. Same thing with steel and other things.
Mhm.
It's a part of globalization. Now, Haiti is a very poor country, but what they do is they have textile mills and different kinds of mills there that the raw materials go in, they produce the product because it's cheap labor, and they sell it back to the States or other parts of Latin America. So industry, you don't have the industry there. You're not making, you don't make cars. You don't have steel mills. Any steel mill is, the steel goes to Europe. Let me give you one example. Nigeria is one of the richest countries in the world for oil. Do you have any oil refineries in Nigeria?
No.
Okay, the only country that had it on the whole coast was Ghana. And that was because of Nkrumah. Nkrumah was a black man in the United States. That's, if he put his African robes on, he was different. But if he just walked down the street like everybody else, he was treated just like all the blacks. And he realized the difference between being in England at Oxford and that way of thinking, because you're just perpetuating the colonialism, because you identify with your aggressor. He taught at a black college here, Lincoln University. So he was very clear about white people and what they do and how they think. So when he went back to Ghana, he began to industrialize his country, and he also educated a large population. When I went to
Mhm.
Tübingen in 1955 to study, there were 13 Ghanaians studying medicine in that one college. And they were
Wow.
all over all the different colleges studying medicine. Now, why? Because if he had tried to send them to the United States, we only had two black schools, Meharry, which is in Nashville, and Howard University in Washington, D.C. And that's where 99% of the black students went. So why would he bring African students here thinking that the University of Wisconsin was going to take 13 out of them? See, he was smart. Now, for engineering and things like that, he sent them all over to other different places. So when he had a cadre of people who could do the work, he was ready to do what was necessary. He had his own refinery. Now, what does that do? The Nigerians produce the oil, they ship it all the way to England to be refined. And out of oil, a barrel of oil, about 90% of it is asphalt. Then the Nigerians have to buy the asphalt from England to pave their roads.
Wow.
If they refined it right in their own country, they could take it right from the pier and pave their roads and sell the refined oil at a higher price. Now, why is that? Well, behind the agreements that you have with nations, I'll give you an example of the French because that's the most glaring from my perspective. You have these little laws that passed in terms of the colonialization, whom would you give money to, who's banking, and so on. So you see, when Nigeria tried to have its own banking, what was the currency called? The naira was equivalent to the British pound. But that got to be too powerful for Nigeria. So they began to undercut some of the things, and now the naira isn't worth, you know, a
Mhm.
pence or something silly. You understand what I'm saying? When you get up to a certain level, there's always a system to undercut you. But you can't be undercut if people won't take the bribe. Now, let me give you one other example, though. Now, this is semicolon, however, the French. When the West African countries began to get their independence from France, France had them sign a thing that said, read it in English, it says, the pact for the continuation of colonialism.
Mhm.
That's a pact for the continuation that we're going to colonialize you in the future because you're really not civilized now. We're going to continue to colonialize you.
Hmm.
That means that 80% of the gross national product of all those Francophone countries goes to France as a reservoir. If you want to build a road in Benin, you have to request from the French that they will loan you from your money, the money to build the road, and you're paying back interest. Okay, now, what is the second part of it? You speak French, la phrase assassine. Okay, what is the phrase that really kills you? If if France says you can build the road, and here's the money for it, well, who's going to build the road?
Mhm.
Well, the French companies have the first right of refusal. They get to say, yes, I want to build the road, or no. If they say yes, no other country can bid on it. Now, not this president, but the president before in Ivory Coast said, I'm through with this. We're civilized. We don't need any more civilization. And I am I'm bidding on these contracts for roads and bridges that I need done. And he put out the bid, and of course, China got the bid. 5 contracts. The French said, you can't do that. That's a part, you're breaking the pact. He said, I'm through with the pact. So what do? You have a coup. Now, the people around him didn't have the coup, but what did he do? They went to Mali in the north, and they got a candidate to run against the man in Ivory Coast. That candidate's mother was from Mali. In their constitution, both of your parents have to be from Ivory Coast in order for you to run for that higher level of president. So they create a war between the two. They have people not a real war, but raiders coming down into Ivory Coast, blowing up things and doing all kinds of things. So the Ivory Coast had a 7-plane Air Force, and
Hmm.
they went up and bombed these places. Well, now the French then used their own airplanes to go and bomb those 7 planes. So now this country no longer has an air force. They can't transport their troops quickly from one place to another. And as this pressure comes down more and more from Mali, a decision has to be made. And he says, okay, out of the 5 contracts, I will give you 3. And he cut off 3 from the Chinese. The French said, no, 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 we want all 5 of them. See,
Yeah.
you have to always understand what is underneath there. It isn't always graft and things like that. It's the fact that your money has been put someplace else other than where you can use it. Gaddafi tried to make a unified Africa. He even tried to have one telephone thing for all of Africa. When I went to Africa in the 1970s, I'm in Nigeria and I wanted to call a friend in Benin. The call went from Nigeria to London, London to Paris, Paris to Benin. Across the border, you could spit across the border. That's how colonial control goes. So what I'm asking you to do is get back to your own culture.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just to facilitate something. I use German to facilitate to get my doctorate. That's all. I'm not German. I'm not confused by it. I don't think that I'm like the French. No, I'm French. No, no. I'm black and I have my own culture. I use German. I use English. But when I'm talking to my friends, we speak in dialect. It's our own dialect. We have a black English that we use. Now, there are some people that say, oh, you shouldn't do that. We don't have, it's not a black English. It's terrible. You need to learn grammar. Well, children need to know both. And I know both. So that when someone that is not well educated speaks to me, I don't go, oh. I listen. I'm able to do therapy with them. If they want psychotherapy and they say words that like, I should have done oughta. That means I should have. Well, if you don't understand, I should have done oughta doesn't, I should have done it. You can't make those differentiations. Is this helpful?
Very helpful.
Okay, let's go on. What do you want to talk about? Where do you want to go?
Um, I when we listen to this, it seems as if the African culture stopped existing when the colonization or slavery began. But when we look at before, what happened? How was Africa? Did we have a common language? How did our ancestors succeed to build the pyramids and all that if they had to get different languages? So,
Okay, now nobody talks about Europe with the different languages. The Germans don't speak French, the French don't speak German. The Dutch don't speak German or French as their mother tongue.
mhm,
Okay? The Poles have their own language. The Czechs have their own language. The Italians have their own language. We don't call those dialects. We don't say, oh, you have to speak one language. You can't, that's not a language. That's not one of the world languages. So you see, the brainwashing is that what you had before is of no value
mm,
unless you become like us. And you see, that's the problem. You can never be like them. That's what, you see, let me explain something here in the United States. As Black people, after slavery, we made tremendous progress in terms of acculturation. That means you learn the culture of where you are. We learned to speak standard English. We could read and write. Okay. We had
mhm,
banks. We had publications. We had newspapers. One was even bilingual French and English in New Orleans. We had all of those things during the period of Reconstruction. And white people became jealous. And in Mississippi, you had the red shirts. They were a band of bandits that went around killing blacks, burning their farms, burning their homes, and so forth, in order to put white control back over. When
mhm.
the other states in the South saw that, they began to do the same thing. Then you had the Ku Klux Klan being responsible to keep blacks in their place. Now, acculturation. When you have a white college, or a white school teacher, physician, dentist, lawyer, in the segregated black community, you have it in the white community, you got to have it in the black, because whites aren't going to work on blacks. So you had generations of black people, college graduates, long before the average white male had a chance to go to college. The
Mhm.
average white male in the United States went to college after World War II with what we call the GI Bill, the government bill that permitted them to have 4 years of college. That's when the average white man had a chance to go to college. Now, let's examine that a little more and look to see what happens. We, as African Americans, are acculturated. We can sing classical music, we can sing spirituals. And the fact that we can do both, Du Bois called that dual consciousness. meaning two ways of seeing things. Another great mind, Vernon Dixon, coined the word diunital. So it says things in ostensibly in opposition come to union. So it's not in conflict, one against the other, dichotomous. It is a union between them. So you can sing classicals and you can sing spirituals like Marian Anderson did, and there's no difference. Not one is up here and the other is down here. No, they're the same. Now, it's very important that you understand that because we as Black Americans in this country have been acculturated for centuries. That is, we know how Americans live. When they come from Europe, they're not acculturated into American culture. However, as soon as they become acculturated, then they are assimilated into whiteness. All right, whiteness is a figment of the mind. It's a privilege. So when the Italians first came here, they were scum, lower class. They got their college education. They began to stop eating what they were eating like everybody else, meat, potatoes. And once they did that, then they became hot dogs and things like that, their children. Then they became acculturated. Now, once they're acculturated, they are assimilated into the white culture. They become American. They become American. There are two books of two groups that came here that were not acculturated, became acculturated, and then became white. One book is called When the Irish Became White, and the other book is When the Jews Became White Folks. Those are two books. They've been written 20 years or so. But those two books give you a real understanding of the concept of developing acculturation and then being assimilated to the mainstream. Now, as African Americans, we have been acculturated, but we have never been assimilated. And a Black author, splendid, writes a whole book on caste. Like in India, they have a caste system. Well, she describes our experience as African Americans is that we are in a caste. Even though we're acculturated, we can never be assimilated into the mainstream because we are a caste. So what happens then is, I don't care, Dr. Nichols, education, all these different things, there are whites who feel superior to me because they're better than a nigger. Okay? All right. So what I'm sharing with you is that if you're going to develop your own Africa, don't be upset by so many different languages. When you go to Switzerland, part of the Swiss speak German, part speak French, part speak Italian, part speaks Latino, which is a Latin-based language. That's all in one country, one tiny country. So what happens is people learn multiple languages. Now, it isn't, what I would suggest is anything that you're going to do in West Africa, you should have fluency in both French and English, because that's going to be the language in which all the manuals, books, and technology is written. But then someone has to make a decision about what are we going to use as a language that every mechanic, hotel worker can speak among themselves. It was Swahili in East Africa. Now, Swahili isn't a language from anybody. It's just a language that was made and put together using the dominant tonal qualities and things like that in East Africa. So you can do the same thing, you have to just pick one and make a decision. And that will be the working language for people working. And the other will be, or you're going to have to go and educate all of the people in your whole society, in West Africa particularly, to be able to cover a conversation in French as well as in English, but really well educated in English if they're in Nigeria, and a conversational and a reading knowledge of French. Now, if you're in the Francophone part, you're thorough in French, but you have a reading knowledge and understanding of English. so that two professionals can talk to each other. If you have an a British trained doctor, Nigerian, and a French trained doctor from Cote d'Ivoire, from Ivory Coast, they should be able to talk about a virus together.
Mm-hmm.
And if your car breaks down, the mechanic that is on the ground that's greasy and you just pull it up off the ground and he takes a milk crate car, lifts your car up to fix something, he should have a language that other people like him can speak. Now, right now, it's your indigenous mother tongue. But you see, language that brings the culture. That's the unification. Now, I mean, that's the way I see it. Now, what did your culture do before? Let's look to see. Mali, okay? That's
Mm-hmm.
right in the middle of West Africa, right? There's a
Correct.
there's an ethnic group there called the Dogons. They use the Sirius star and the moons around it to know when to plant and what the season is going to be like. Is it going to be rainy or hot and dry or whatever? And they plan based on that observation of that star. The moons around it bring about significant changes in things. You can't see it with your naked eye. You can only see it with high-powered microscopes. I mean telescopes. So how can you know what's up there? They're not telling you. There was a priest that went there and stayed 30 years, and he wrote a book called The Silver Fox. Still doesn't know how they did it. They looked at their drawings, and they look like elementary school children or kindergarten children. Now, here's what happened. They said to this white astrologers who came knowing all about the stars with high-powered microscopes, in 6 years, the star that goes around every 70 years will be back. Now, in terms of your intellectual capacity, 20 years is a generation. So that's 3.5 generations before that star comes back around, 70 years. So in the African culture, if it's not a written language, how do you know that it's coming back around? They said, oh, we know. Well, they looked with these extensive high-powered telescopes and found nothing. And they were laughing. And then there it was, right there at the time the Dogon said it would be there. They were so angry, they said, how do you know this? Who told you this? Nobody told them. But that's an integral part of their African culture. Okay? Now, there's another part. We call it juju. Now people say, I don't believe in juju. Yes, they do. Does it work? Yes, it works. It works. It works. Yes, okay. Now, that's a form of science. But because the English could not count it and measure it to know it, they said, oh, it's evil. That's the church said it's evil. The English intelligentsia said, oh, it's pagan. So if it's pagan and irreligious, it's really bad. But there are a lot of people who know things about roots and herbs and grasses and barks, and they can take care of almost any illness you have. But if you put them down and call them witch doctors, see how language is used? You're not calling them indigenous doctors or healers. You put a label on them that turns people against them. Witch doctor. Oh. Rather than, this is an herbalist. He's one of the leading herbalists in our community. Oh, I have a cold. I have sinus. What have you got? I'll fix something for you. Now that's different from saying, Oh, I don't take drugs. I only use prescription drugs made in England. Oh, where do you think they got the ingredients to make the drug in England in the first place? Where did they get the knowledge that that drug would do it? Well, it's they take the leaf, they synthesize it, and find out what its chemical structure is, and then they make you a pharmaceutical product that you then buy from them. Rather than going out to the herbalist saying, give me some tea. China still keeps their tea. You see, China, they still have their indigenous medicines. If you've got complaints in China, they put all these leaves together, tell you boil it and drink something 3-4 times a day. People do it, they get well. Well, we laughed about it until we could break it down to something that we understood. Let me give you another example. Chinese use acupuncture. They said, oh, it doesn't work, it isn't this, it isn't that. Now we're teaching people acupuncture here. They went over and learned as much as they could, came back. Now you can be certified in acupuncture in the United States. They steal. But you see, they label it. Before, it wasn't science. It had no proof. Because their system of thinking was completely different. So once again, I'm saying we have value. We have a lot of things that we need to know. But if we don't learn the mother tongue and write it down and write the stories and write the mythologies and put them all down in books that then we have our children read, we lose it. Lose it. And that's what makes you who you are. I will never be German. And you talked about my ability to speak German. I even speak the dialects because I was a psychotherapist, and if a patient comes speaking Swabish, I can't say speak standard German. I have to listen to them speaking Swabish and do the treatment. Now, I never wake up in the morning thinking, oh, I have blonde hair and blue eyes, I'm German. Okay? I don't delude myself. I'm black. I know who I am. I'm not French. Mais je parle pas le français, but I'm not French. Okay? So you have to know who you are and be happy with who you are. That's the secret. Then you can do other things.
We have the situation out here in Germany where, particularly when I'm taking the case of Germany, which I know very well. And also, we Africans out here, you have a German passport or a nationality, even in America, Africans that go to America and they refuse, like it's an abuse when someone said you're African and they always want to justify, no, I'm German. And then you look at you are black and you come from Africa and you say I'm German, and you really even justifying it. Now Germans correct us most of the time and like, yes, you're German on paper, and then we Africans we say, oh, that's racism. What kind of a mindset is that? Self-denial or what?
Okay.
Complex?
Well, the French have the same problem. I have some friends in Martinique. Now, Martinique is France. Don't be confused. Okay? It's an island in the Caribbean, but it's France. For an example, I was getting ready to fly from Martinique to Saint Martin, which was it's half of the island is Dutch and half of the island is French. If I tried to fly directly from Miami to Fort-de-France in Martinique, it's an 8-hour layover. If I fly to the Dutch island and then take a taxi to the French side, I can get something within 2 or 3 hours going back and forth between Saint Martin, the French section, and the rest of France, Guadeloupe and Martinique.
Mm-hmm.
I had finished with visiting friends and doing some workshops there. I get to the airport and I'm lined up. I'm getting ready to get in line to go from Martinique to Saint Martin. And I'm going into the overseas section. He said, no, you're in the domestic. I said, domestic? What are you talking about? He said, no, domestic. Well, their idea is that all of these islands are, you're just going from one part of France to another part of France. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's their thought process. When they grow up in Martinique, the French educational system says that it doesn't matter where you are, a French teacher has to be certified in France. So you have blacks that are certified in France, you have Chinese that are certified in France, all these people, all these different nationalities, Vietnam and so on, they have a rigid training for teachers. You have to have a master's level in whatever you're going to teach. Then you teach for a year and they evaluate you, and then finally they certify you. And you can be placed any place in the French Empire. All right, so when these kids when they take the baccalaureate in Martinique, they score higher sometimes than the prestigious one in Paris, and it goes like this. One time they're higher, next time it goes back and forth like this. So for all practical purposes, these kids are French. All right, now they read and write French, they speak French, they are French, everything, until they get to France. It's the same thing with Africans, who are thoroughly French until they get to France. Now, here's the difference. Yes, you have Deutsche Staatsbürgerschaft, German citizenship. Aber sie haben keine deutsche Nationalität. You don't have German nationality, meaning if someone closes their eyes and says, what does a German look like? You don't look like a German to me. That's why they're asking. Because they could accept the passport, that's your Staatsbürgerschaft, your citizenship. But they don't accept the idea that you have German nationality because they have something in their mind in terms of what Germans look like. It's the same thing with the French. They think of a beret and a long cigarette and painting, those little cartoon kind of things that you see about the French. So if you don't look like that and you're African, well, or coming from Martinique, it's like, we don't know who you are. You're not French. You're not like we are. Now, let me give you something. I told you my children went to the French lycée. There was another little African boy there in the class, and his parents were from Guinea. Okay? And my daughter's African American from Washington, D.C. They were both in the French lycée. They had a little program, you know how they have the little children's programs? And they had them in costumes. My daughter had a costume from Normandy, and he has something from Burgundy. Here's these two little black children dressed up like they came from the French provinces, because all the other children look like they came from the provinces. Now, how much cognitive dissonance is that? You see what I'm saying? He didn't look like he was from Burgundy. He had the clothes on, but he wasn't or Lisa, my daughter, he wasn't, from this part of France. She wasn't from Normandy. But what I'm sharing with you is that when people look at you and you're not what they think the nationality is in their eyes, they see the passport. Yes, you have the citizenship, but I don't see you as a German national. That's the difference. Okay.
Yeah, but the issue here is, yes, the German. That's what. But why should I as an African deny me that brain of us refusing want to always be in other person's identity? And I prefer to say, African Americans, it's there. You fought for it. You were there. Maybe nothing as from that. But we're talking about Africans that living the continent. Is that a lack of an identity? We never were taught it. We were all mixed up in this. What is the point that we really feel proud to be an African, to own our identity? We never were thought about that. We just grew, and then why do we admire? Is it the development of the country? Is it the integrity, the norms? Why do we refuse being African?
Okay, well, there's a group there that has its own identity and keeps it pretty much, but it has trouble because it tries to keep its identity. That's the Turks. The women wear the hijab. You've seen a lot of the women coming now from Syria and so on. as refugees,
Mm-hmm.
they continue to wear their clothing. Now they get
Yes.
into a lot of people yell at them, what have you, but they keep their culture. Now
Correct.
they have not been assimilated into the German yet. Their children are less likely to do that, and they will become assimilated and then a culture, they'll become acculturated and then assimilated into the German culture. Now, the Turks didn't do that. The Turkish men that came to work are still Turks,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And for the most part, even if they marry German women, they raise their children as Turks. Or when the children go to school from this mixed marriage, the school sees them as Turks, not German. Now, if you wear like your headdress and your African clothing and jewelry, when it's not so cold you freeze to death, then you maintain your identity. You retain your 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 ethnic identity because you will never have a German nationality as an identity. You will have the citizenship, Staatsbürgerschaft, but you will never have deutsches Identität or deutsches Nationalität. You won't have it. So don't fret about that. Don't fret about it. And when you come to the American and we have your passport, just speak German. It says where you were born. You were born in Germany, and you just speak German or French. It'll throw them off. Hmm?
When is the part where we start? I mean, I see in the comments, and a lot of people are like, do our leaders on the continent, when they set an agenda for Africa, really consider all this? Is it ignorance? And the question is, have you great African Americans and scholars that know these cultures and difference and see where we are at a deficit? Could there be some kind of like advising, the leaders or the institution in Africa? What is the possibility of really, I don't know.
Okay, let me share something. Yesterday, I did a consultation with a young woman who is a systems specialist. She goes into a company and she looks at all the systems and she can tell you this. There's a blockage here. This isn't going through. There's a blockage here. It's not going through. Well, as an American, she simply, when she's talking to the people that are the company that has hired her, he says, there's a blockage here. There's something wrong here. Who's in charge of this position? I told her, I said, oh, don't do that. Because the person sitting in that position could be in my circumcision group where we had our rites of passage. I don't want you to attack him. Or he could be from my village. How many times do people say from their village or they say we're brothers? That's because they come from the same village or we're cousins. Okay. But you don't know who's sitting in this meeting who is the cousin to that person. You say, oh, that's the obstructor. Fire that person, get somebody else. Oh, see, there are many connections in Africa. Some are seen and some are unseen. And you don't know who belongs to what group. See, when I was at the University of Baden, I didn't know that the professor of English, the physician, and the administrator were all in the same group. So if I went to the man who was in charge of housing and said, I want a house, and he said, I'm working on it for you. Then I went back to the professor who was in charge of the department. I said, we have been here 3 months and we don't have a house. I want to know why we don't have a house. And that man has told us that we would have that house. We go by there and somebody else is in the house. He lied. Oh, now the man who's sitting there as a professor says nothing. But I don't know that they're all from the same village. And they have a little group together that they protect each other.
Oh God.
See, you don't know. And you can offend or you can get in serious trouble. So the way I counseled her is to say, oh, the system is blocked here. I don't know why, but it's blocked here. As your analyst, I can tell you it's blocked here. And you, the members of the group, need to find out why it's blocked. In that way, she hasn't said, this person needs to be fired, or this person isn't doing their job. So you have to be very tactful as Americans working with Africans, because you don't know. And then another thing that you have now more Africans going to England to study,
Mhm.
okay? And these are Africans whose parents were maybe school teachers or civil servants, and they go to to England to study. That group only interacts with the British lower class. England is a two-class system, the upper class with royalty and the lower class. So the interaction is only with the lower class. And they marry and intermarry and what have you, and the upper class of English don't care at all. Now, years ago, in Nkrumah's time and earlier, Chief so-and-so sent his son with enough money to buy anything he wanted, house, car, enough gold, and he went to Oxford or Cambridge. And he associated only with this little group at Oxford or Cambridge in law or what have you. And he identified as British, a loyal person to the crown. And when he returned, he acted in that capacity in his own country and looked down on the others because he was different. Now, Nkrumah got in trouble because he's saying, I'm going to educate everybody. There's no tribalism here. We're educating everyone. And I'm going to move this country forward. We have our own oil. We have all that stuff. And that was too bad an example for the other African countries to see. And so the CIA and the British intelligence and all of them came in and undercut him. And how did they do it? They said to this group, oh, he's such a commoner. He's tearing up the country. He's a socialist. You are a part of Great Britain. You have to do something about it. And of course, they undercut him and sent him out. Now, when he died, everybody said, that was a loss. We've lost a great leader. Well, it's too late now. He's dead.
God.
Well, you have to understand your enemy is, you see, if you look at Europe, the only thing they have in Europe is coal. England has coal. What are whatever resources do they have? Iron? Can they mine enough iron in England to produce all the things they're supposed to produce? Look at the other countries. There are raw materials that you have in South Africa that are necessary for computers. There's one mineral. That's the only place you find it. None of these European countries have it. That's why China didn't have enough, so they went down there and they've got 25 years supply because they built some bridges and roads and what have you, reception halls and so on. So if you're going to do something for unification, you have to realize that there are forces outside that are trying to keep you from having it. They're very powerful, but only through unity can you accomplish it. And you have to remember, when you're unified, there's always a Judas.
Mhm.
You have to figure out who Judas is and get rid of Judas. That's what destroyed the Black Panther movement here in this country. There was a Judas. They were doing wonderful things. They gave breakfast to the young kids. These are kids that had no breakfast, no lunch. These young men went and cooked breakfast and lunch for them. Some of them needed to be bathed because they had urinated on themselves the night before and didn't have any clean underwear and didn't have a bath. They'd go in there and bathe them and send them on to school. They also had a political agenda saying, we will not tolerate the police coming in our community and manhandling us and beating us up when it's not necessary. We will patrol our own streets. Well, that meant they had to carry a gun. Now, at that time in California, anybody could carry a gun. What did the California legislation do just like that? They said only blah, 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 people that are licensed could have a gun. Do you think any of the people that were in the Black Panthers could get a license? No, there was always some excuse why they couldn't get a license. So if they carried a gun, it was illegal, and you could be punished for carrying a gun when it was illegal. So you see, you always have systems. You have to look at the system. Let me explain something to you. There's an overt statement. We want to see that Africa has a unification. That's the overt statement. You have to look to see, what is the covert agenda? What are they really trying to do? And how are they going to undercut what they say up here? Because if I say it up here and I have laws down here that don't permit it to happen up here, or I have trade agreements down here that don't permit it to happen up here, it won't happen. Or if a country says, we are going to liberate ourselves from France, and all the other little French countries sit back like this, then it'll never happen because they have coups. But if all the Francophone African countries said, we're not paying any more of the pact for the continuation of colonialization as of today, every one of them. And then when there was an attempt to make a coup, they said, no, we know the game. We're not having a coup. Well, the French force is going to come in and say, well, bring your army because every single one of these countries is going to fight against you. Now, the French Navy is number 2 in the world. Number 1 is the United States. Number 2 is France. Number 3 is quickly coming China. Not even Great Britain. How is France number 2? Because they have islands in the Caribbean. Therefore, they are part of they sit in all the meetings for the alliance of North and South America and its naval laws and maritime things. What about the Pacific? They have all those French islands in the Pacific. Therefore, they belong to that. Now, belonging to both of those, they are number 2. If you took those islands away and they became independent and didn't deal with France, then France would be number 30 Navy in the world.
30?
Yes.
And why are we not doing? Why is it not happening? Because of the disunity?
No, because Martinique is France.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so in the United States to Hawaii is the same as France is to Martinique and Guadeloupe, as France is to the French Polynesian Islands. Those islands are France. They are called Département de France. They're like Hawaii is to the United States, or Alaska is to the United States.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great undertaking. You've got to know a lot about. You see, if you go back to my philosophical aspects of cultural difference, if the highest value is in the object or the acquisition of the object, Europeans are going to do everything they can to maintain the object. And that's how they have their level of civilization. They have the money, they have the healthcare, they have all the things they do because they draw from all these other places to support their own little space in Europe. And if you try to do anything to disrupt that, they will use all kinds of techniques to keep you from doing it. Now, let me go back to the Ivory Coast. They had 7 little planes. I told you the French bombed the plane, which meant that these people from Mali could come in and create havoc because there was no way to fight them. Otherwise, you'd have the troops all the way up there and gas lines and so on. So it was difficult to do. The French immediately went to the United Nations and said there should be a ban on selling any weapons to the Ivory Coast, and certainly no planes, because Russia was going to sell them. So the United Nations passed a ban, and nobody could sell them any planes. Didn't mean they didn't have the money, didn't mean they didn't have pilots to fly them. Nobody would sell them to them because the countries that made them were all white.
Hmm.
So it's a wonderful undertaking, but you have to recognize you've got a lot of things going on down here. You can have all this overt planning and wonderful and what have you, but you have to remember that the treacherous waters, the heavy waters, the fast running streams are down here, the currents are here. And you have to be sure to pick them out. And as they bubble up, you have to cut them off. You have to cut them off.
It seems as if it's not just possible. I mean, we all know the systems that are working against us and their machinery of war and destruction to keep us small, particularly on the continent of Africa. But now, if we look at the pandemic in the reality now, it seems as if it won't actually fit again. And so the option is Africa. Now, what is the tool, the cultural tool, like you've been talking about, our language? If we develop a language, like even the case of China, they have a unique language. And so I studied also with Chinese. And so if they would have to discuss something, even during exams, they just discuss it amongst them in their language and nobody would hear. So language is really one of the essential and powerful tools. Imagine all of Africa, we just have one language. We would have been even having this conversation in a language.
Yeah, well, you see, you have Portuguese, that's Angola and Mozambique. You have Francophone Africa. You have Afro-Arab Africa. Hmm? And you have the British Empire of Africa. You have all those European countries that through education got their colonies to say, yes, that's the great answer. And in that way, you couldn't talk to each other from one place to another.
Mhm.
When you go across, just go across the Gulf, the Bay of Benin, Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Ghana, a couple more than the Ivory Coast, and so on. So every other country is another language. So you have to do something like the East Africans did. You have to develop a language. Swahili is not an indigenous language. It has a lot of indigenous
Mhm.
words, but it's a made-up language. So if you're going to have something, then, why not just take Swahili? It's already made up. It has literature and everything else in it. Just everybody in Africa is going to speak Swahili among, ethnic groups. And then the one language is going to be English because that's the one that everybody else is learning. French is, there, some colleges don't even teach French anymore, and none teach German. I mean, nobody teaches German. Germans are holding on to try to hold on to their language, but everybody in Germany speaks English. So that's the world international language, English, and Swahili will be the language that everybody in Africa speaks. And it's not a difficult language to learn, and you can read it and write it. It has poetry, literature, and everything in it. So you have a common base, so that people that work as mechanics and plumbers and electricians and so on have one language that they can speak across any place where they are. Any place they go, they can speak to somebody and they'll understand them. They can have a conversation, they can work together. Then you can move people from one part to another because all of them can speak one language that they all know. Then at a different level, everybody can speak English. And it isn't that difficult to do.
How? That was what I wanted to ask now. I mean, you're a professor, a psychologist, you've been teaching. just give us one solution, because we have seen that all these African leaders, they have no interest in bringing this kind of a united one Africa at a focus and just say, now we're going to change all our curriculums from kindergarten. Swahili is going to be in Africa, in Nigeria, in all the 55 countries. But now we know they don't have that interest. They don't like it. They want to be disunited. Now, can you just give us one way in which, I mean, we're not going to do it, but we can start. How could we do?
Okay, you have to have consent in terms of what will the language be. You see? And that's
Swahili?
where that's where nationalism comes in, and tribalism. Well, if you're going to speak, that's an East African language. It's made up. Why don't you learn my language? It's Yoruba. We have literature, we have mythology, we have everything. Everyone should learn Yoruba. Well, see, Yoruba's tonal. You see, you can. So if you don't know you don't know the tones, you're in trouble. Oko can be your husband, a hoe that you hoe the garden with, or both. They're the same word, but the tone is different. So if you went to somebody and say, I'd like to borrow your husband, because you got the tone wrong, rather than I'd like to borrow the boat or the hoe. See, you have to take a language where, and Swahili is just blah, 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 blah. It has no tonality to it. So
But the
how do you do
majority,
it?
and even African Union.
It has to be said that we have made up our mind that the commercial language for Africa is English. The working language for Africa is Swahili.
Okay.
That's how you do it. Now, the commercial language means transacting bills and all this kind of stuff with law, and that's English.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of how people go to the market and exchange, or a group of workers leaves one part because you need plumbers someplace else, well, the plumbers from Ivory Coast can go and work in Nigeria, where they need plumbers in the north. And everybody speaks Swahili. See, that's why they did that. The British made up the Swahili language because they wanted a common language across all those English-speaking countries that they had.
But how did, it's disturbing, Prof. How did French, English had, how did they impose the language on our African indigenous languages? Okay, now we even have the tribes, like you say, if we even have to, what type of methodology? I just want to know. Okay, they came with the education and school. Now, is it also possible that we can say, if you want to get a job, for instance, where it really hurts, like in Germany, you want to get a job, you must speak German. You want to get a scholarship, or you want to get a nationality, you have to speak German. Not citizenship, sorry.
Staatsbürgerschaft.
Stadtbürgerschaft, genau. Also, if you want to speak that, du musst auf jeden Fall, du musst Deutsch sprechen können, sonst geht gar nicht. So, if you want to do that, so maybe if the common agenda would be that they give it through incentives. Now, like particularly, I'm really focused on the Africa continental free trade area. The boundaries are going to collapse in 10, 15 years. We'll be trading among each other. Yes, English, the commercial language, and then the local language should be Swahili. What kind of incentives we can use so that it would be obliged for people to learn these languages to be able to get something, for instance?
Well, your ability to travel from one place to another. See, in Europe, it used to be that you have to go and get a special permit on your visa to go from one country to another. But in this way, if you're going to go to another country, then we don't want you to walk there and not understand anything.
Correct.
So if you're going to go there and sell things, then you have to know the language that all of us speak in Africa, and it's Swahili. You incentivize it. You incentivize it. And you pay kids to learn it. Kids learn it very quickly. They learn all kinds of languages very quickly. They just pick them up. Edwin was 5, and he's not Yoruba, but he's a little Yoruba boy. And when he went to the French school, it was everything. He's just like a little French. Now he's in China, and when you don't see him, when you just hear him on the telephone or conversation, he's Chinese. But they pick up languages quickly. They pick them up very quickly. Now, there you are, German, French, English, and your mother tongue. So it isn't that people can't. It's they don't have the opportunity, or there's no reward for doing it. So the best speaker of Swahili in Togo gets to visit all of the East African countries.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right. It's been almost 1.5 hours, and I know you're really it's exhausted to educate us. I know you're a professor and you're used to. But I want us to take a short break. And yes, I want to pick some of the comments that they've been putting out there. They also a lot of I see a book on saying Dr. Edwin is absolutely right in his analysis of management of things, languages, for instance. And some people are saying voodoo is also the way, like our way of a religion and what we believe in. So coffee, Azuma just asked Dr. Nichols, what is it that you're drinking? I mean,
I drink tea. I'm sorry. I drink tea.
He's drinking tea.
I
And
thought you could tell that I'm British. I thought you could tell I'm British. I'm having tea in my drink, my Japanese cup.
it's just kind of like break the concentration, and we pick some comments. And Mark Tracy say we have to send thousands of people to all French islands, unify, and weed out immediately those sellout elders who laid it out. How to win her to help govern tribal want let you in. I think something like that. Yeah. And we have a viewer from, I think, from Rwanda. He said in Rwanda, there's some people that also speak German.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a comment that is saying, yeah, we should boycott their products. Yeah, boycotting the products. How is this all going to do with our culture and how we go back? It's been quite interesting to see the comments and the questions and how people follow up the conversation. And really, I'm grateful. On our Facebook page, we are having also some comments here that people are saying, we are watching with you, Dr. Nichols. You're really on track. That's the way we should go. Eric Ngale from UK is saying, when Nelson Mandela came out of prison, he said he was going to transform South Africa into a nuclear state. They threatened him with another imprisonment. Do we have a nuclear power country in our continent?
No, the answer is no, because South Africa was, and they took that away as a part of changing the country. They took all of the atomic plants and everything out. Some of it went to Israel.
Okay. And then there's also a question here. All the nations that looted Africa's resources have gone and equipped themselves with weapons of mass destruction, leaving us with Jesus. What is your opinion on that?
Well, let me share something with you. They talk about juju, but it's a power, okay? And we don't study it because we have put it down and we said all kinds of things, not religious and so on. The Nigerian government was going to put a road through a village, okay? And the
Yes.
village elder said, no, run it around, don't tear up our community. The government said, we're going to do it. And they came to do it, and the people protested and said no. So they sent the army. And when the army crossed the line, there was like an electric volt or something, and a couple of them, a whole truckload of them died. So they didn't cross that line. They went back and went someplace else. Now, that kind of power we don't understand. But let's go back to Egypt. There's a migration from Egypt across North Africa into Senegal and into West Africa.
Mhm.
Diop made it very clear from the vocabulary of the Kemetic language and what they speak indigenously in Sierra Leone. I mean, not in Sierra Leone, but in in uh, where does Diop come?
In Senegal.
Senegal. Yes. So the Senegalese have words in their own language that are identical to the words in the Kemetic language of the Egyptians at the time of the Pharaoh. So there's a
Mhm.
migratory trek that comes across. And of course, they had lots of educational secrets that we don't know. But let me give you an example. When you look at a pyramid, those blocks of stone are huge and weigh tons. But when they put them together, you can't even take a business card and put it between there. They fit so perfectly. Now, how did they
Mhm.
do that? It would take centuries for workers to sand it down to have it that perfect. How did they move those stones from the quarry all the way? Well, we tried to see the wheels and pulling and such. What about the capacity for something to float on air? We
Mhm.
don't know. Why didn't it? Anytime there's something we don't understand, we say, oh, it was from outer space. Like we have these, when you go to South America, they have routes that the men ran in order to take messages from one place to another. When you look at it from the air, you're trying to figure out how on earth could they figure this out? We don't have
Mhm.
the knowledge. Because when we went there, we killed everybody off that had any knowledge at all because we wanted them to adapt Christianity and adapt the Spanish language. They killed them.
Wow.
So you see that knowledge is lost. But there's still some people in Africa that have knowledge that we need to know. And rather than to criticize them and ridicule them or have them angry and just do negative things, try to go to somebody to get a school that says, we're going to learn these indigenous African things. And you can't learn
Mhm.
in, it's not a 4-year program. It's a 10, 20 years of learning. So people that are dedicated to it, you're going to have to financially support them while they learn it. You have to support their families and so on, because nobody, they have to trust you first. I told you this priest was there for 30 years and he never learned. He learned little thing and he wrote the Pale Fox. That's what it was, the Pale Fox. But he still didn't have any answers. They didn't trust him. Okay? He was French. They
Wow.
didn't trust him. But it doesn't mean that they didn't have the knowledge and they didn't pass it on. That's why they were able to talk about that. There's a name for that star. I'm blocking on it, but there's a name for that star that comes around every 70 years. And it comes around. So you see, there are a lot of things that
My,
we poo-hoo and we say,
yeah,
ah, 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 but we really need to get somebody in there to learn.
Michael is asking, is it possible that scholars like you with such great knowledge reach out as consultants or advisors in some way to the African Union? Is there a relationship?
I'm flattered. I would be, anything that I can make as a contribution, I'm glad to make. But um, that's why I'm talking on this program. I'm talking on this program because I want people to realize that there's such a treasure such greatness in Africa. And if we would just stop trying to be somebody that we're not and look at what we have and stop fighting each other. Let me give you an example. You had the Igbos and the Hausas fighting each other, killing each other off.
Mm-hmm.
When a Hausa or an Igbo goes to Texas to work, they're niggers. They're all black. They don't see any difference at all. They're all black. And where
Mm-hmm.
they live and what kind of job they have is just the same thing that us as African Americans have. They're black. That's all they have. So you see, outside of your own country, you're all fighting each other. The world laughs because, as far as they're concerned, when you leave there and come to any other place, they put you down. So until we can pull together and get past all these little tiny things that are insignificant and decide what we want to do and then start moving in that direction, knowing that the colonial powers are going to do everything they can to undercut. They will buy somebody out. They will bomb something. They will do all kinds of things. But you have to recognize what they're doing, why they're doing it, and continue on your path.
Um, Africans on the continent, as we're talking always about the brain drain, the need that young people are relocating the continent and coming to Europe or to the West for greener pastures. There must be some loss of trust and confidence. Um, what would it really take for an African that has a scholarship, all the possibilities to study in the West, to say no? I want to stay back on the continent, like Osman Touré, and I love to be here. What is it that
Okay,
would make a young African now left
okay,
school, jobless, and
okay.
yeah, no security,
All right.
nothing?
Nigeria and France are about the same size in landmass. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Nigeria has more college graduates with advanced degrees than France or
Okay.
Germany. If you go to Houston, Texas, you will find the largest Nigerian population outside of Nigeria in Houston, Texas. And if you look at the Nigerians that are there, the reason they're there is because they have advanced degrees and work in the oil and what have you industries there.
Mm-hmm.
That means a lot of knowledge. For those that try to go back, they're not received. They're undercut. I personally have a woman who is like a daughter to me, and she has a nursing degree, a master's in nursing, a master in operating nursing homes. She has all these certificates, and she has a PhD in nutrition. She has wanted to go back to work in Nigeria. When she tries to go back, the people are so angry and such envy that she's not even safe physically. She's tried 2 or 3 times and she's now given up. They won't receive her. They fight her when she comes back because it's like she's taking their job. She's not taking their
Mm.
job. She's trying to build a facility where women can go and not die in childbirth. She wants to develop. Now, you have the university hospitals and so on, but one hospital doesn't do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can't ask for a piece of paper that she doesn't have, a certificate. She'd go and teach. But, I'm Professor so and so, and I don't know. She didn't study in England at Cardiff. So who is she? See, the pettiness, the unwillingness to. If all the people in Houston, Texas, the Yorubas, went back to Nigeria, and worked in Nigeria, it would make more money than you. It would be in competition with Europe, with the European common countries. It would be in competition with them. But ask the Nigerians in Houston if they're willing to go back. I'm willing to go back, semicolon, however, comma, but so-and-so tried to go back and didn't. Look, let me give you another example. There's a man, I used to ride the taxis a lot because I did lectures all over. And I got to know this Nigerian. Every time I wanted to go someplace, I would call him and he would come and take me because he was reliable, he got there on time, and all these kinds of things. All right. So he worked in a taxi cab like 12 hours a day, and then sometimes he'd work another job, saved his money, went back home, and started a chicken farm. And he knew all of the science about incubation, taking the eggs, and everything about it. And then he bought equipment to gut the chickens and pluck them and all the things together. And he came back to the States to earn some more money. He turned the project over to his nephew. The nephew took money, but didn't do the work. And in a very short time, the whole thing collapsed. How many stories like that have I heard? So the people who are there have to think that I have to make this thing work. It's not like it's going to come from high or something like that. How many times have people asked you from your country to pay school fees? And like your money just grows on the tree. Send money for school funds. Send money for. In your own experience living in Germany, how many times have you had to send money back? Well, if you go back, do they take the initiative to do what they're supposed to do? I got to a sore point, didn't I? Okay. Yes, you know it's true. All of you know it's true. I know it's true too. Mm-hmm.
But isn't this also the standard of what do I say? The environment, the thinking, the greed that we have, the greed that has also, it's everywhere in the world. But there is some standard of understanding, communication, and even just perceiving. For instance, we do those mistakes a lot. Now, like in this particular case, the brother in Nigeria obviously does not have those kind of skills and knowledge and even the vision that you are giving these projects to. So isn't that also a deficit for us? For instance, we giving even money. We've seen all that, all sort of combinations, but we want to blame it on, yes, that underdeveloped mind or what? Because
Well,
the standard of thinking doesn't even match.
some of it is just lazy, not lazy, but just not willing to do what is necessary to make it work. Before he
Yes.
left, the nephew would come to work on time, would do the work, and everything was running well. That's why he was able to trust the nephew to leave, to come back to make more money, to make it even better. But then the nephew began to sell the chickens and keep the money, not reinvesting it. And if equipment broke down, he didn't have it fixed. So in a little while, the whole thing fell down. This man lost all of his wealth. He had no more wealth. Now he's back, driving cabs 12 hours a day. And he gets letter from his nephew, I need school fees for my children. I need this for that.
Wow.
See,
Unity
we have to change attitudes.
on
Now,
purpose.
a lot of this is from the colonial period.
Yes.
We have to decolonialize the mind.
Okay. Wow. Anyways, I'm opening up the lines. I think I see a lot of people dropping in their questions here, or if you should want to ask a question or make a comment, please, you can call. The lines are open now. We'll take a few questions. We have 15 minutes into the show. But I just want to ask something. Somebody was asking here, Prof, who would be your favorable, not favorable, yes, president or leader that you think maybe is modeling its people in the right way? Now we have Kagame, Excellency Kagame of Rwanda. We have Magafuli of Tanzania. Just those two. I mean, you're not obliged to say a name, but what model do you think is Pan-African
They're
that
alive,
works
but
for the good of the people?
they're alive. So I won't get into that. But my number one man was Nkrumah, Kwame Nkrumah. If you
Okay.
look at what he set up and what he did, and you follow that model, you are in a very wonderful place. He got rid of tribalism. Now it's back, but he got rid of it. And the reason he got rid of it
Mm-hmm.
is he took children from every ethnic group, put them into little English uniforms, put them into a private school, and educated them. And then when they finished their the A levels, he sent them to Europe or other places throughout the world for advanced degrees. How thoroughly were they educated? They were so educated that they had all the things that Europe required. In Germany, to be a physician, this phone is going crazy here. In order to be a physician in Germany, hold on a second. I'll have to call back. It's my son calling from China. I'll call him back. Um,
I also have some callers waiting for you
yeah.
here on the line.
Let me give you one example. How thoroughly were they educated? They had Latin. Now remember, they have an indigenous language, Twi or Ashanti. They have different languages in Ghana, but all learned English and well enough to do to do A levels, or at that time it was called the Cambridge. Now they go to different places throughout the world to study. Those that came to Germany, he put them in a 1-year intensive year course where they lived in a dormitory all together, and they had German professors that taught and taught, so that when they left there, they could go to medical school, pick up a book and read the book as well as any of their German classmates for medicine. All right, that's what he did. Now, what is important about that is in Germany, as you know, in order to be a physician, you have to pass the Kleines Latinum, the small Latin, and for PhD, you have to do the Grosses Latinum, the big Latin. Now, the small Latin is to read Caesar, and the Grosse Latinum, that's what I had to pass, is Virgil, or I read Tacitus, Agricola, and Germania. I demonstrated my ability to read Latin at that level to get my PhD, okay? Now, not only did they have to read the Latin, they had to translate it into German. You see what I'm saying? Now, they have English, Latin to English, Latin to English, English to Latin. Now you're saying German to Latin to German to English. So in their mind, they're moving it from Latin to English, then into German. In order to pass the exam, they passed it without any question. You see, so he had prepared them. He knew what he was doing. He prepared them. But you see, one other thing is we don't, either you go to university and you become somebody like that, or you don't have a trade. Right there where you are in Germany, at 14 years of age, they start their apprenticeship program to be a plumber, a Schneider, whatever it's going to be. And by 17, they're a journeyman, which means they can work at that trade any place throughout Germany. And if they stay in that trade until they keep going to school until they're 21, they can take the national examination and become a master in that trade and have their own apprentices. Now, what that does is it gives you 80% of the population are able to do a job that enables them to earn a living. And they have a skill. Now, what about Germans that are minderbegabt, that don't have like the 90% IQ? They give them janitorial training. How many places in Germany, when you go to Germany and you look at the baseboards, the wood that goes around the floor, you look at carpets, you don't see, like you come to the States, everything's filthy and nasty. They're clean. Now, who does that? Somebody that has 85 or 90 intelligence quotient, but they're so proud in what they do that it's absolutely spotless. So that's the come from whatever
Correct.
you're able to do. But we don't do that. He has to go to France, England to university, he has to go to France to university. Oh, now we applaud. Well, some people go to Lausanne, some go to Tübingen, to Innsbruck. They don't have to all come to the States. They have excellent professors in Africa. See? But we don't have a working thing underneath. We have to learn how to do it. Like they may learn how to be a mechanic, but they're not trained to be a mechanic. So if I were Maro for all of Africa, I would start by getting training in all the skills that we need so that we don't have to import anybody to do the work for us. We have Africans that can do it all. And then you train a cadre of people who are going to be responsible for medicine, history, and so on. That's the way to do it. But again, common language. But in the meantime, with their own. Okay, go ahead. Oh.
We have the first caller. Hello. Fine. Your volume, please. Hold on. Yes.
You are amazing with the words that come out from your mouth. I am amazed. And I just want to thank you very much for this inspiration talk. As long as you are here, and also not to forget Mama Susanna Tete, that she's also doing good work, non-sleeping, always running around to feed the Africans good knowledge. So, Baba, I want to ask that, for example, what you have said a lot, and all of it is on point. And in fact, I cannot overemphasize what you said, that how, beneficial it is. But then, I just want to know, please, that, for example, in Ghana, we have polytechnics. Now the polytechnics have been turned to what is called technical university. Meanwhile, before we were at home, the public polytechnics are the one that, in fact, do many technical work in the country. Talk of the roadworks, the civil engineering, name them. They do it. But now they are out of place. They say they're making them a university, of which we also know that when a person have a first degree, they think they are boss. They don't want to make their hand dirty. So who is going to do this? That's number one. Number two, as I'm talking about this one, I also want to emphasize the fact that why, if you can tell us, please, that why is it that we have universities in Africa, and as a Ghana, as I can say, but yet we always import engineers from China. Now we even go to Pakistan, India, and to come and do our bridges, our roads, and what have you. Why is it that? So does it mean that our universities are just a time wasting for people to go to universities, or just to learn a trade? Even a man will have a trade, a woman will have a trade, yet they prefer somebody coming from outside the country or outside the continent to come and do. I believe also, though, that this is part of the brain drain technology that we have embodied. That is what making that become what we are today. So, Papa, I will also urge you, please, if you can enlighten us about what is going on in Africa today. Talking about the AU, I don't know whether all what you are saying you have written a book or you are about to write a book, so that maybe Mama Ericana and your Mama Ericana has Africa 101. Maybe you can write Africa 102 or 103. So they combine that, and we can use it in our various homes, school settings, and all the extra educations, so that people can read. Because it looks like we are lost. We lost too much. Some of us were lost, but we found ourselves. But some are still in the lost to be found, and they fight with you when you're trying to tell them that, hey, you need to stay upright. They don't get it. They still can't get it because their mind is so close. So that is my take. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm laughing because he's out. He's been kicked out, but yes, he would get the questions, and he would also be with us once every month on their institute that we're putting out together. He is one of the brain professors that, together with Professor James Small, with Dr. Oba, and all these brains that have been coming here, is not just coming to lecture, to talk to us, to inform us, or to have a conversation with us. Of course, there is a big milestone that we're putting out there. Exactly what you were saying. We are putting out a Pan-African Institute for Applied African Knowledge and Technology and whatever, journalism, skills. For now, the setup would just be like an online because of all this, but it could go into other sectors, like try to work with all the institutions and educational institutions on the continent. And that's why I find it so, so important that us just having even the conversations with them, it's already getting us closer, knowing them. A lot of us did never ever know that we had all these big brains out here just somewhere, because our leaders and the continent would not recognize the potential of its diaspora. And so they keep relying on foreign, on China technology that doesn't even last long. You know what China is no quality anything, that's for sure, right? And so we have our brains like him, Native American, studied all this, knows the German, the China, the everything. On all these brains is stuck here in the diaspora, and the African Union or the leadership on the continent is not even able to identify this potential and to ask for help, but they will go to take many, no name. So it's really, it's like, we don't want to say they don't know what they're doing. So, but if they know what they're doing and they choose not to do what is right for the continent and its people, then something is just wrong in that sector. So, yes, we are at the end of the show, Kofi. I can pick your call now, because if you were to ask a question, Professor is no longer here with us. The stream kicked him out. And so, yes, we'll have him another time. Like I said, he's one of those permanent voices that we'll be having here once every month. And all these professors will be coming once every month, and others. So I want to thank all of you for joining. As you all know, all right. Go ahead, Kofi.
Good evening, my dear sister.
Good evening, brother.
You look so beautiful, like always, But one thing, I want to say, I have three things to say, but let me try to point it once and one. The man talking about, the citizenships of we are Africans in the European. Sometimes some of us don't want to agree that it's an African. But there's something going on in Africa which we didn't, get it to that point. You know what? For instance, in Ghana, we the Ghanaians outside in Africa, in Ghana, when election time reach, we cannot vote. And there's no way out, which we I mean, the diasporas can vote. This shows that we are not Ghanaians. Because if we are Ghanaians, we have right to vote. You get me the point? So this thing happened to the Nigerians. It happened to some of Africans too. That is why some of them, when they get the European passport or European citizen, they say, oh, okay, now take your country. I don't want it. Yeah. And secondly, our language. As always said, like I want to ask the man, which benefit our language going to give it to us if we learn our languages? Because it's no need for you to learn only one language in Africa, because we have a youth of languages, and each country have I think one language to speak that the majority speaks, except Nigeria, because Nigeria they have different Igbo and all those stuff. So from my idea, each country is supposed to learn its mother tongue and learn the rest of the language of the African countries. Swahili or Igbo language or all those things before learning European languages. You get me the point? And then finally, which is Dr. Saji Fukano Nkrumah, each and every one who pretend to adapt himself as Pan-Africanism, you can't be enemy for the West. Immediately you be Pan-Africanism, you can't be enemy for the West, like you, like Messi, like Patrick Lumumba, each and every one. You are enemy for the West. So it's time for you to not say to apologize. Time for you to, as we're doing now, open the eyes of those eyes which are closed, so that they will be able to join us to fight this. I mean, this war, because this is a war, intelligent war. So I hope that one day we'll win this war. I know that our ancestors behind win, and we'll win this war, because they are the job which they left to us. The job with them they start and they couldn't finish, and we will finish this war. So I hope that. Thank you for helping me to participate this evening too. Thank you, my dear sister.
Yeah, hold on, Kofi. Okay. Yes, I thank you too for calling, but I just want to make this remark. Did you know who was you watched the show, right?
Yeah.
Who was speaking?
The name of the man I couldn't get you the point right. Yeah, but I said white man. I said this white man talking about Africa, but as Africa we have other colors, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. Point of correction. He's not a white man. It's an African American. Second, number two, he's called Dr. Edwin Nichols. His name is written on even the tag and even the title, Papa Kofi. I'm just, excuse me, I'm just.
So when I see someone like this, I think it's an European.
No, it's not. Okay, so, but I think when you say that man, Papa Kofi, come on. Even in Twi, say in Twi, I would understand. No, it's all right. Yeah, it's the language. Exactly. That's why I said preferably just say it in Twi. Okay. Thank you very much, my brother. Have a nice weekend out there. Thank you. Yeah. Hello. Hello. Good evening. Your connection, I think, is shaking. Is it from my end? Your volume? Hello.
Hello. Is the connection stable now?
It is stable. It is perfect. Go on.
Thank you very much, Susan, for the great work and inspiration. I also want to thank Dr. Edwin so much for the great work. And I've really learned a lot this evening, and I've really been inspired. I had several points or questions I would really want him to, I really wanted to bring to his attention. I have a feeling, like an observation, like Africa is deliberately being ignored when it comes to the education in the West, I have a feeling like how they educate or how they interact or they expose their like in the education system or in the technology issues, Africa is ignored. Like it's not like it exists, and this kind of sidelines it and leaves it in the darkness and in a way, like in a certain design. I really wanted to hear Professor's opinion on that.
Okay.
There are issue about language. I was wondering at the moment, because we have so many languages, and the topic, the main topic was about language, the unification language. What would he say about using symbolism and numerology, as a numerical language? You know what like numbers and symbols.
Yes.
What if maybe we can start from that point and use numbers, because numbers are universal, you know, and also symbols, they don't have it's not a mother tongue to anyone, you know. And then maybe we can progress to Swahili and so on. Also, I would also like to hear his views, or someone else, also yours, when it comes to politics. I would really encourage people from the West to start, West Africa, I mean, to start being interested in politics that is happening in the East Africa, and also East Africans having interest in politics in the South or in the West, and also supporting candidates, you know, and saying like, this is our preferred candidate, you know, despite you are in the East, but yet you are really interested. Also, something else I've really noticed is the bitterness. Like Africans are really bitter, yeah. It's understandable, but I would really want us to bring that to attention, because it may work against us, because I've really noticed a lot of bitterness in Pan-African forums. Yeah, thank you very much. I have that I missed up there.
Okay, just hold on. I think there's a lot of very useful information that you've put on here. As you have seen, the professor is no longer there, but he's going to be here once every month. So, of course, we would address these questions that you're putting out here. And yes, we need that unique point. And the Pan-African Daily TV right now is, I think, if we keep it on this lane to report the diaspora and the continent and break-ins and top happenings and bring topics like this, that is already the agenda that we want for the United Africa. That is, I don't see any order. Even the medias, we have all medias, but they just country focus. And that country focus is like, even if they take the news of Kenya media and they're reporting a news in Nigeria, and Kenyans will just know that something happened like that. But to get a unique format, I think what we're doing on the Pan-African Daily TV, we're on the right track. We're on the right track to break. The situation in Uganda, believe me, it's just so funny that even some people somewhere or on the continent never even heard about it, or didn't even know that such a drastic and a very key turning point in the politics in young people and the old government that was happening in Uganda, and many people were not aware of it. So this kind of connection that you're saying and the bitterness and all that, I think we are having now a great platform where we can unify, particularly bridging our diaspora that has been so sidelined by this kind of governance, this kind of leadership that we have on the continent, even though they acknowledge them and say it's the SID region, but they're not giving out a handshake to them. That is not acceptable. Exactly, we as well on the continent, we meet our brothers in the Caribbean and we say they are Caribbean, they are Americans, they are Jamaicans. We don't even know that they are our siblings. And we're living in the 21st century. This is unacceptable. It's a shame. And so us starting even at this level, even though we talk about our political agendas and stuff, our unique competence and what actually makes us, that what is the dream for Africa is this unity. This unity, just getting to know ourselves. It doesn't matter whether we touch professional topics or we touch just simple things, or we just come here to laugh, right? Or we just come here to laugh and crack our jokes and see who is watching, who is saying what. Those are the tools of the unity that we're talking about. We're already doing it, but we're acting like some other rocket has to fall from the heavens. Some one president will have to stand and make a war. And they said, no, the basic things that we're doing on the Pan-African Daily TV here is so important. Your comments in the chat, you're calling in from all the parts of the world to contribute. And even just the fact that you give me the impression that, oh, I'm calling from this, I'm sending a question from this. What is it that makes unity? That is the point. And so even if we just come here and just laugh and find out what we ate today, that is unity. We can unite on a laughter. We can unite on a plate. We can unite by just beating our drums. We can unite by just meditating like yesterday. But that common us, that thing that binds us, doesn't matter whether what agendas we're putting. For me, the objective and the vision of the Pan-African Daily is that we meet every evening like this, like in the village, where we gather and we talk about stories. And then we have one, like our professor today, that would tell us something that we have heard, not maybe at an intellectual level, but I know all of you that have been watching from these different platforms has picked something. And you've been engaging, asking questions, making comments, even just saying, Kofi is always say, Susan, you've forgotten to drink your water. And I read the comment and I drink water. So what more else is that power? Is that force that we need? We can't stop it. At least we have a voice to speak, even if our minds are still not in the right direction. We meet here, we laugh with one another, we speak with one another, and we crack jokes. And we don't want to be, some kind of, it has to be a mainstream media. We're just doing it the African way. And this is exactly what has been missing for decades. And now we're just bringing it back. So I'm so proud of you. You definitely are also proud of me. And I thank you of all the things that we're always doing. Let us keep the spirit. It doesn't take a whole bunch of things. It takes just a small people with one unique vision, and we have it. We don't need any other thing. We're the leaders of this Africa that you're dreaming about. We're the governance. Now we talk about here, we supply, we do all the things that we're doing. We create jobs for ourselves here. You support me. We are looking for a satellite. People come and talk about their projects. That is the Africa that we want. That other Africa that is existing somewhere, it is just a geography. The space that we have here, the feeling that we have, the joy, the love, the pain. How many times have we cried? How many times have we sympathized with those that are in war? How many times do we show that solidarity? What is it that we wish for them? What is it that we really want? This is the Africa that we want. Don't look somewhere else. You're the leaders of Africa, and we're doing the right thing. So I want to thank you. Be aware of the fact that Susan needs a break and my boys. So what I mean is Sundays and Mondays, we take a break. Not only me, Nesha, my PA, daughter, that is putting out all these great speakers together. Patrick Kasirim, that is making sure that we have all the beautiful contact share out there on our social media platform. We also have our flyer designers and all this team, even you that are commenting. You need to hang out to somehow listen to something else, drink coffee and do something else, right? So we're taking a break every Sunday and Monday to organize the next week. And then when we come again on Tuesday, we meet, bringing all the fresh memories. And you tell me all the stories, what have been happening in your life. And I tell you also what I've been hearing. That's what makes the Africa that we want. That is the unity. That one that is existing it's a case study, okay, for what we're trying to build now. So I want to thank you. I love you guys so much. There's no way I can be that not sitting here. So please don't always say, oh, Susan, you are sitting here. I love sitting here. I cannot even sit any other way anymore. I can't, and I know you too. And I've had really positive feedbacks of people like, wow, the Pan-African Daily, it's like we don't have it one day, we are just sick. I love to hear that. That is the Africa that we want. That is what unites us. It's not the money. Yes, the money comes because we own the richest company too of the world, the minerals, the diamonds, the platinum. Now, even as we sit and see all these thieves taking them away, trying to enrich themselves, they're poor people. They must take from us. If they don't take, they die. They're gonna be hungry if they don't take our land to feed the whole humanity. So sometimes, yes, we have enough. We really have enough. All we need to just do is, who doesn't have what we share, like in those days where our ancestors did, like in the village, you have a bread and we share it all together. So we don't need much. We have everything that we want. The one good thing that we have is our life, our health. Every day we can meet here. That is the gift that nobody should take away from us. So, dear Africans, we see ourselves again on Tuesday. But like yes, I don't bother even if you're on the chat groups, on WhatsApp groups, posting your questions. If I land on it, or Naisha would forward it. If it's really burning, I will respond. But if there is a breaking, as you know, we would be live even tomorrow, even on Monday, and so you would know that. Okay. So bye bye. We see ourselves here. Ubuntu. Feel the spirit. Okay. Be gracious. Have gratitude. Just meeting here, it's a gift no one should take from us. So bye bye. Good night. I love you all. Bye.